Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to our education preview for the first half of 2021. My name's Steve Spargo. I'm the head of marketing at Walker Books Australia. I'm joined by Bethany Neville, who's our marketing manager. And we also have our colleague Georgie Carroll looking after the chat and the Q&A today. So if you joined our first preview earlier this year, you'll notice the setup is a little bit different. We're now in a webinar, so that means that your audio and video is off. Feel free to eat and drink all you like, but we do encourage you to use the chat or Q&A function with any questions or comments. So with the chat function, you have the option of chatting with just panelists or panelists and all attendees. Just make sure when you're chatting, set it to everyone, so all attendees, so everyone can see what you're saying. There's also the Q&A function. So if you have something that is a question directly for us, pop it in that, and then Georgie or one of us will answer that when we can. If you had signed up before yesterday afternoon, you would have been sent an email with a link to the order form or the book list of what we're talking about today. So that can help you save you from taking notes, because it has all the price, ISBN, title, author information in there. If you didn't get it, Georgie's going to pop a link to it in the chat right now, so you can grab the PDF of that if you like. So although we're not gathered in person today, I'd like to acknowledge the Darug people, the original custodians of the land that I'm on today in Western Sydney, and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation where Bethany and Georgie are, and to pay my respects to elders past and present. So today we're going to look at our best books for schools and libraries for from January to June next year. So we're going to start with young adult, work our way down in age to picture books. And of course, we publish and distribute hundreds of books every year. So there's going to be plenty that we don't have time to cover today. But you can catch more of our great titles by following our social media. So for education-specific content, you can go to Twitter at @Walker_class. And for everything else, you can go to @WalkerBooksAUS on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Plus, we encourage everyone to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. So we've got a link to sign up to the newsletter. So George is going to put that in the chat as well. And that's it. Let's get into it. So we're going to start with Concrete Rose.
Concrete Rose is a prequel to The Hate U Give, taking us back to the world of Garden Heights. It follows Maverick Carter, Star's father, who's 17 years old and about to have his world flipped upside down. Angie says for this book, she was inspired by the stories of young men, and her hope is to inspire them in turn. She says, I started talking to young, real-life mavericks, young men who are trying to still find their way and are often written off and seen as troublemakers or this or that. They're never seen as having potential, they're only seen as being at risk. They have stories and they deserve the opportunity to not just grow, they deserve the opportunity to be seen as someone beyond their circumstances. When we first meet Maverick in Concrete Rose, his circumstances aren't great. With his drug kingpin father in jail, Maverick is already under a lot of pressure and shouldering a lot of responsibility. That only escalates when Maverick learns he's the father of a baby boy, and the mother, who is not Maverick's current girlfriend, disappears. Suddenly, Maverick is part of two very different worlds and trying to juggle his dual identities. As a gang member, a life that's starting to look less and less appealing, and as a young, overtired, but doting father to baby 7. Maverick is trying to do right by everyone, especially Lisa, the girl he loves. But a shocking, violent death in his community, in his own driveway, means Maverick starts rethinking the future that he thought was inevitable. Like The Hate U Give, this book feels timely and important and has a lot of things to discuss. It explores issues like family and fatherhood, especially what it's like for a family when the main provider is incarcerated, violence and masculinity and what being a man looks like, grief and death and loss. Anyone who loved The Hate U Give will be keen to return to Garden Heights, to hear more about Star's parents' love story, and to see how Maverick came to be the man he is. Angie says, I'm a firm believer that empathy is more powerful than sympathy. I would love it if somebody read my books, specifically if they read Concrete Rose, about this young black boy who is heading on the wrong path, and they got a better understanding of him. and it makes them decide to stop clutching their purse extra tight when a young black man walks by them. Now, is that absolutely going to happen? Probably not. That's some entitled stuff that they still got to deal with. But if my book can play a role in that, great. More importantly, I just want that young black man who, when somebody does walk by him and they clutch their purse tighter, I want him to read my book. Maybe it'll make him feel a little more seen, heard, and understood. This book is a gut punch in the absolute best possible way and shows just how strong Angie Thomas's talent is. It's an absolute must-have, and we'll be writing notes to use Concrete Rose in the classroom alongside The Hate U Give.
Displaced. This is a story about someone arriving in a new country and having to make a life for themselves while overcoming all manner of adversity. It's a story that is as relevant now as it was in the 1870s when this book is set. Eloise and her family leave Cornwall on a treacherous voyage to the colonies in New Zealand. And as if that wasn't hard enough, her brother goes missing and her father leaves to look for him, leaving Eloise to keep the family together in a new land. Plus, to complicate matters further, Eloise meets a Norwegian boy, Lars, and sparks start flying. Eloise is a strong character, a brave young woman with a solid moral compass and a compelling story. Christina Sanders has based this story on comprehensive research of Scandinavian and Cornish history in New Zealand. Her research started with stories of her own family history. Christina's research also included experience on tall ships, getting first-hand knowledge of sea life and all the hardship it brings. Although this story is set in New Zealand, our country's histories share many similarities. And beyond the educational applications of this book, it's a great read, and I'm sure it'll be loved no matter where it's read. Displaced won the Storylines Tessa Duder Award, which is an award in New Zealand for an unpublished manuscript. Walker Books sponsored the award, and we're represented on the judging panel, and we are really proud to be publishing such a rich and compelling story.
Neil Shusterman's Game Changer is about a teenager who gets transported into parallel lives every time he takes a hit on the football field. But it's also about empathy, prejudice, race, sexuality, and gender, and reimagines our reality with some dark what-ifs. So we've got a video from Neil himself to tell you a bit more about the book and why he's kind of terrified of it.
Hi, this is Neil Shusterman, and I'm pleased to present to you my new novel, Game Changer. A year ago, the world we're in now would have felt like an alternate reality. How do you write for a world that is so fundamentally changed in so many ways, you don't know where we're going to be a month from now, much less a year from now? The answer is you don't. You try to write a story that is universal, one that will still resonate in whatever reality we find ourselves. This is a book that took me 4 years to write. Partially because a story like this needs to be approached with utmost care, and also because society is changing so rapidly on so many fronts. I feel that this story is even more needed now than when I began. Game Changer is about empathy. Ash Bowman is a fairly oblivious white heterosexual male, but in the course of the story, he's going to have all of his notions of the world and of himself challenged. He's going to have a crash course in racism, sexism, homophobia, and privilege through a series of world-bending events that are going to hit him hard. Honestly, I'm terrified of this book because people will either get it or everyone's going to be ticked off, because it's like I've taken every gaping hot button issue and shoved in a red hot poker. But in the end, that's how you cauterize a wound, and we are a deeply wounded society, desperately in need of healing. My hope is that this book will help with that healing. As for being terrified of my own writing, well, if what you wrote doesn't scare you on some level, then you're doing something wrong. I wish you an eye-opening, thought-provoking, nail-biting, occasionally troubling, but ultimately satisfying read. Thank you.
So just to give you a bit of basic background about the plot, it starts when Ash, a defensive linesman in his high school's football team, takes a hard hit, and for a second, everything goes ice cold. And bam, he's back to normal. Or is he? Because things are the same, but not quite. That afternoon when driving home, Ash heads right through a stop sign because he later realizes it's because the sign was blue, not red. His friend looks at him funny because stop signs are always blue. Ash buries this slight concern, but then the next football game his team plays, the ice cold rushes over him again. And when he's in the locker room, the logo on his team's helmet isn't what he remembers, and the car that lights up with his beeper is unfamiliar. Turns out in this world, his family are filthy rich, but Ash also realizes in this reality he's a drug dealer. And things do not get better. In the next world Ash finds himself jolted into, to his horror, he learns segregation still exists, which changes everything about society in terrible ways. I don't want to spoil anything that happens from there, but basically this book is a mix of everything we love about Neil's writing. It shows off his world-building skills from Scythe, mixed with the thoughtful ways he turns issues on their head, as we've seen in Dry and Challenger Deep. Game Changer is about privilege and preconceptions, about how often we unknowingly judge people by race or gender or sexuality. It's about speaking up against the everyday abuse that we often let slide and the things that we can't really understand unless we've experienced them through a different perspective. I think the word empathy is going to come up a lot tonight. A lot of the books we're talking about have empathy at their core, and this is one of them. It might actually be my all-time favorite Neil Shusterman book, and I think it's going to make an incredibly readable class text.
So Echo in the Memory, this is a historical YA novel, and it tells the story of two very different teenage boys from two very different eras, both inexplicably tied to the land. In the present day, Will's not keen to be sent to his grandparents' farm in remote New South Wales. His life has been hard enough recently, without having to start over in a whole new place with grandparents that he hardly knows. Then, before long, he starts to have strange memories that aren't his. 200 years in the past, we meet a young boy who's been being sent to Australia as a convict, and Australia feels like the end of the world. Like Will, he's also struggling to find his identity and find where he belongs in his new home, and other people on the homestead aren't making it easy. Both boys are at a crossroads in their lives, struggling with feeling left behind by people they love and distant from the lives they used to know. Grief and tragedy have roles to play for both of them, even if they don't fully realize it yet. Cameron Nunn is an English and history teacher himself, and he's meticulously researched Echo in the Memory, including through court records and transcripts from interviews with young convicts. He's crafted this novel to fit into various parts of the curriculum, and we'll have plenty of education resources ready to share with you for this one, so look out for it in June next year.
The Outlaws, Scarlet and Brown is the sharp, witty and action-packed first book in a new series by Jonathan Stroud, already the best-selling author of the Bartimaeus and Lockwood & Co series, both of which are currently in development for film and TV. The UK editorial team gave us a little video from Jonathan, so I'll let him introduce the book himself.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Stroud, and I'm delighted to be here with you today to introduce my new book, The Outlaws, Scarlet and Brown. Here it is in this rather tatty manuscript volume. I'm supposed to be handing it in to Denise very soon. I better do it, otherwise she'll beat me up. Okay, so it's an English Western set in the distant future, and it features a couple of charismatic anti-heroes who make a long journey through this strange and distorted landscape of this future England. It's got strange creatures, it's got gunplay, it's got humour, it's got, I hope, good characterisation, and I'm having a lot of fun creating it. And I'm really excited to be bringing it to Walker Books. It's been a long time since I've been with you guys, and I'm really excited to be working with you again. So I look forward to seeing you all very soon.
So fun little tidbit about Jonathan Stroud is he actually used to work for Walker in the UK as an editor. It's actually where he met his wife, who was a designer. So we're really, really happy to have him back in the fold. Because like I mentioned, Jonathan is really well established already. His books have sold over 6 million copies in 35 languages worldwide. And his titles, including Scarlet and Brown, sit really neatly in that Artemis Fowl, Skullduggery, Pleasant kind of area of your library. In the world of the Outlaws, Scarlet and Brown, most major cities have crumbled, and people now live in small communities with vast expanses of dangerous woods between them. We meet Scarlet prepping for a morning bank heist, which is a pretty normal day for her. Scarlet is quick with both her weapons and her wit, but Albert Brown, who she meets purely by accident, is the opposite. Methodical, sensible, thoughtful, and hiding a pretty huge secret. When they team up together, very much begrudgingly on Scarlet's part, things kick into high gear, and they find themselves on the run from powerful enemies with the very real prospects of death and dismemberment breathing down their necks. I loved this book. Jonathan's writing is an absolute delight, and the story goes along at a cracking pace, yet never feels overwhelming or convoluted. As characters, both Scarlet and Brown feel so genuine and real, and you find yourself rooting for them to succeed, but also just that tiny little bit terrified that it's all going to go up in flames. It's one that has such wide appeal that I think you're going to struggle to keep it on your library shelves for long. Another one from me. So All Our Hidden Gifts is the first YA novel from UK-based journalist, author, and podcaster Caroline O'Donoghue. All Our Hidden Gifts is an incredibly engrossing book starring Maeve Chambers, who finds herself drawn into the dark, dangerous, and mysterious world of the occult. It starts when she randomly finds a set of tarot cards while cleaning out a dusty storage space and starts doing readings for the other girls at school. Turns out Maeve has a natural knack for tarot and really starts to enjoy telling fortunes. That is, until she does a reading for Lily, her ex-best friend, and an ominous card appears that isn't even supposed to be in the deck. 2 days later, Lily vanishes, and Maeve senses that there are strange forces at play. Maeve teams up with new friend Fiona and Lily's brother Ro to try and find out the truth of her gift and bring Lily back from wherever she's been. O'Donoghue's writing is so incredibly readable, and her dialogue is some of the best I've ever read in the YA space, that really genuinely feels like young people talking to each other in a way that can be quite difficult to get right. Along with the pitch-perfect youth voices, it has great queer representation and storylines, characters that feel both fresh and familiar, and a plot that gives the reader exactly the right amount of mystery and the supernatural, woven in with relatable teen issues around friendship, love, and identity, as well as facing up to the guilt and consequences of your actions. I think I read the first 6 chapters of this probably about a year and a half ago, and I nagged and nagged the UK team until they had the full version, because even from the start, I cared so much about these characters and what happened to them. I was completely hooked, and I hope your teen readers are too.
And now, Cassandra Clare is back with the second book in the Last Hours series. This series is also set in the Shadowhunters world, like Cassandra's other books, and it's set chronologically in between the Infernal Devices and the Mortal Instruments. So following on from The Last Hours Book 1, Chain of Gold, which came out earlier this year, the Shadowhunters, Cordelia, James, and Lucy have to track down a knife-wielding killer through London, all while harboring dangerous secrets of their own. Like I said, Chain of Gold was released earlier this year and immediately became a bestseller. The Shadowhunter series has a massive fan base, and I'm sure there will be plenty of your students who are desperate for this to be on your library shelves. And now The Great Gatsby, a graphic novel adaptation. This is an absolutely stunning adaptation of the classic novel. It's a novel that's still studied in high schools today, and like many of our classic graphic novel adaptations, the author-illustrator, Kay Woodman Maynard, has approached this almost like a film. So the language has been edited, modernized, and reordered, but without ever losing the feel of the original. Some scenes have also been moved around to suit the flow of the story better. We see the story unfold through Nick's eyes, yet, of course, Nick is an unreliable narrator. So Woodman Maynard has included a number of illustrations that don't match the text, and it makes readers really work to discern the truth of the story. This is a really easy read. It's perfect for those less than motivated students. The art is lovely, the color is very playful and adds an extra layer of meaning. I really enjoyed reading this, and I know it will do really well in high school English classes, either on its own or alongside the original novel. And now, The Broken Raven. This is the second book in the Shadow Sky trilogy, an exciting YA fantasy adventure set in an alternate Britain full of ancient magic and warring clans. Our lead, Agatha, has Down syndrome, though this isn't named in the story, and she is a brave and fierce protector of her people. And she's joined by her companion, Jamie, who is thoughtful and incredibly anxious. Together in the first book, The Good Hawk, Agatha and Jamie set out on an epic journey to save their clan. Now, in Book 2, The Broken Raven, Agatha and Jamie have returned home as heroes, However, the peace never lasts long, and a mysterious evil power is unleashed that could kill every living thing on the island. The author, Joseph Elliott, is a British actor and a screenwriter, and he's mostly known for his work on children's TV. In the Shadow Sky trilogy, he's created an epic and magical world that's absolutely compelling, and it has some very welcome representation of Down syndrome in children's literature.
And now we're moving on to some of our middle grade and junior fiction. And first up is Oddity. When we first meet Clover Elkin, she's keeping a secret. In an alternate history version of the 19th century, Clover's riding on the road with her doctor father after a particularly rough day. What's keeping Clover going is an item hidden in her haversack. While it might look just like a regular ice hook, it remains freezing cold, even when placed in burning heat, and Clover knows it's an oddity, like one of the fabled objects that her mother had collected before her mysterious death, and her father still flat out refuses to discuss. Clover, however, is inexplicably drawn to oddities, reading about them, looking for them. She knows there are oddities all over the world. In Spain, for example, there was a fishing net that pulled trout from the water fully cooked with herbs and butter. In the southern coastal town of Juniper, someone found a button that whistled a cheery medley whenever it rained. Clover is thrilled by the thought of just how many oddities are out there waiting to be discovered. But oddity searching is a dangerous game fraught with corruption and lies. One day, Clover and her father are attacked by trappers looking for oddities, and her father is overpowered by them. Before he dies, he throws a bag at Clover and tells her he has one oddity left that she must keep safe at all costs. Clover embarks on her adventure in a world set up against her, finding more strange oddities and teaming up with other wonderful characters to find clues to the final showdown, her mother's fate, and Clover's own destiny. Oddity has clever plotting, world building, and sharp dialogue, peppered with danger in a wild adventure. Confident readers who enjoy depth and character, along with an immersive fantasy world, will really enjoy this one.
Now, Skywake Invasion. This is a fresh and original middle grade sci-fi adventure trilogy. It sits somewhere between Percy Jackson minus Greek gods and Charlie Higson's The Enemy without zombie gore, and with a little bit of John Marsden's Tomorrow series thrown in. Our protagonist is 13-year-old Casey Henderson, a girl gamer obsessed with one particular game, Skywake, a smash hit team shooter in which you're fighting against an alien race called the Red Eyes. Casey's been playing it for a while now, and she's good. She's very good. She leads a team of 5 teens, online friends who have yet to meet in person. And Casey is a little on the shy side, a complete self-doubter, but when she's in the game, this is where she finds her flow. The story begins when Casey and her younger brother Pete head to a large local shopping center to take part in an esports tournament for Skywake. Finally, Casey will meet her team in real life, where they hope to smash it against the other hopefuls. However, the day doesn't quite turn out as planned. Little do Casey and her friends realize, but the game is actually an alien training tool. It's created by an evil extraterrestrial race. And when the aliens swoop on the tournament, the authorities think it's an invasion. But Casey and her teammates realize the truth. The Red Eyes are abducting the best gamers to fight in a distant alien war across the galaxy. With her knowledge of the game's sci-fi weaponry, Casey offers the best hope of stopping the aliens and saving her little brother Pete when he's abducted by the Red Eyes. But first, she and her online teammates will have to learn how to work together in real life. Essentially, the book focuses on themes of leadership, self-confidence, and family, but it also delivers page-turning action and heartfelt emotion. As she fights to save the world, Casey discovers that all those hours playing video games maybe weren't a waste of time after all.
Twitch is a heartwarming middle grade mystery from M.G. Leonard, known for the Beetle Boy books, and we've got a little video from the author to tell us more about it.
Birds, birds, birds. My book is full of them. Hello, my name is MG Leonard and I'm here today to talk to you about my new middle grade adventure that will be published by Walker Books next year, and it's called Twitch. A murderer and a robber who escapes a local prison, whose loot has never been found, and its millions, turns a community upside down as they try and capture the robber and discover the whereabouts of the loot. Twitch is a 13-year-old boy, a loner, an outcast. He's a bird watcher. The children who are bird watchers tend to have certain things. They tend to have maps, compasses, definitely binoculars, sometimes cameras, always a notebook and a pencil. These are all things that a good detective should also have. The whole adventure takes place in Yorkshire, just along the canal from Hebden Bridge, in a place called Cromwell's Bottom, which is just outside Brighouse, between Brighouse and Elland. And I went there last summer, and me and my children, we did a bird spotting expedition. And the deal was, if you spotted the species of bird, it went in the book. And we went in the month that the story takes place, which is the first month of the summer holidays. There are over 30 species of bird in the book. Me and my boys, we spotted every single one of them. They'll be described accurately. There'll be lots of lovely facts for the children who enjoy factual elements of a story. But of course there'll be drama, and there'll be my usual quirky, humorous take on an adventure. It's a story about friendship. It's a story about bird watching, the beauty of ornithology, about being outside in the natural world. It's a story of bravery and acceptance. And I'm really hoping that the boys and girls who love my Beetle Boy books will really take Twitch to their hearts too.
So Twitch really hits that sweet spot of clever, quirky, funny, well-written middle grade that tugs at your heartstrings, but still has a pacey plot to keep young readers turning the pages. It's also the first in a planned trilogy, so look out for more adventures soon.
Now I've got The House at the Edge of Magic. So this story centers around a 10-year-old orphan pickpocket, or a thiefling, called Nine, who's been taken in by Pockets, a Fagin meets Gollum type leader of a band of cut-purse children. The story starts with the pickpocketing of a mysterious woman in a red dress, and inside her purse, Nine finds a small ornamental house. And when she knocks on its tiny door, it grows into an enormous sprawling house, one that grows upwards and outwards and fills every bit of space in the alley, contorting and lengthening and rearranging until it is a wonky 11 stories high. And this is where the real fun begins. Inside the house, our hero meets Eric, a troll housekeeper with a penchant for feather dusters, Flabbergast, a young wizard who's fiercely competitive at hopscotch, and Dr. Spoon, an enchanted wooden spoon who wears a kilt. We learn that this house has been cursed by a terrible witch, and that its magical occupants are trapped inside. The only person who can help them break the curse is our thiefling, Nine. So this is going to be the first of a 2-book series, and the sequel will be out in January 2022.
Sylvie is a graphic novel memoir from young French artist Sylvie Kantorowicz. The book is told in first person with a combination of thoughtful, poignant, and hilarious illustrations throughout. Sylvie takes us through her young life in France up until she finishes high school. Sylvie spent her childhood living in the school where her father was the principal, and things at home could sometimes get a bit tense, especially with her mother, who had very clear expectations about how Sylvie should be and act. Over the years, Sylvie struggles with feeling different and discovering her identity, as well as with trying to fulfill her mother's expectations, particularly around how Sylvie should perform academically. Sylvie's mother pushes her into studying maths and physics, for example, when what Sylvie really wants to be pursuing are her own interests in working with kids and, more than anything else, her deep love of art. One cool thing about this book is the illustration style kind of changes and grows as Sylvie does herself. I'm writing classroom ideas for it at the moment, and there's a lot to think about and discuss around family relationships and pressures, creativity, and finding out what your passion and purpose are in life and how to pursue them.
Pause is a really special Australian middle grade debut about 11-year-old Alex. Alex is autistic, and so sometimes he finds it challenging to connect with his classmates and make friends. But high school is looming, and having a friend by his side would make it a much less daunting prospect. So Alex makes a plan, the crux of which is for him to win a trophy at the upcoming Paws Dog Show with his best friend, his cockapoo Kevin. What follows is an incredibly genuine and heartwarming series of events as Alex learns about the ins and outs of non-canine friendship and about finding people who love and accept him just as he is. So the author, Kate Foster, says that while autism is a relatively new addition to her family, she's learned so much about it, especially how it's not a one-size-fits-all. She says Paws is not just about showing young readers an authentic representation of how life might be for one autistic child, but to also help everyone realize how one small accommodation, one comment in passing, 1 minute to think before we act, can have a lasting and considerable impact on others. Paws is a book not just about friendship, but also understanding, empathy, and compassion. Especially it's about how special our connection with animals can be, as Alex and Kevin are actually inspired by Kate's own son and his dog Claude. We've got discussion questions ready for you to help share this one with your students, and we really hope it's going to be a book that connects and speaks to some kids in a way that not many books have before. Now, Fish Kid and the Turtle Torpedo. So this is book 3 in the Fish Kid series. I'm just going to touch on this quickly. It's such a great series. It's very pacey, and Kylie Howarth's illustrations are really fun. There's also so much educational content in these books, but it never feels burdened by that. They are easy reads, and they're really valuable additions to your library. We've got a great activity kit for the series, which has some discussion questions and some activity sheets. And now we have introducing Delilah LaRue. This is from Nettie Hilton, the author of A Proper Little Lady and the Princess Peony books. It's a great new illustrated junior fiction for emergent and newly independent readers. The book has 3 stories, each of which is between 30 and 40 pages, and there's lots of white space with fun black and white illustrations throughout from illustrator A.E. Delilah LaRue lives in a cute little house with her mum and dad, who are incredibly busy and important people who mustn't be disturbed. Instead, it's Nanny Annie who looks after Delilah, and together they go on all sorts of adventures like winning a rose competition, sleepwalking on stage during a play, and saving an art class from a spider. Nettie Hilton has a really delightful writing style. The plot moves along quickly and lightly, and there are a few good laughs thrown in as well. These stories are great for newly independent readers, but they're also short enough for a good read aloud in the classroom that you can get through in one sitting.
And on to some of our non-fiction. The first one I'm going to talk about is North and South from New Zealand author Sandra Morris, which introduces kids to animals from both the northern and southern hemispheres and contrasts, month by month, how they survive and thrive. In October, for example, monarch butterflies in North America, who are unable to survive in northern hemisphere winter, migrate south in one long journey, feeding by day on flower nectar and resting at night. Meanwhile, in the southern hemisphere, bar-tailed godwits, which you might know from Jeannie Baker's Circle, bar-tailed godwits in Australia and New Zealand collect on mudflats to feed after they've flown a gobsmacking 12,000 kilometers from their breeding ground in the Alaskan tundra. So not only does every gorgeous spread tell you lots of information about various animals and how they react to the changing of the seasons, it also informs the reader about their conservation status and biggest threats. This book is one to pore over, coming back to month by month and learning more about our natural world and how climate change has our animals at such risk. You can see the level of detail in this book. There's so much to learn, and the way that it sets it out is really fresh and interesting.
I'm going to show you a few books now from Britannica Books, which is a really exciting new imprint from What on Earth Books. also made in collaboration with Encyclopedia Britannica. So with this collaboration, they're specializing in using Britannica's wealth of knowledge in creating kids nonfiction that's modern and designed in a way that engages young minds. All of their books so far are dip in and dip out, meaning you can flip to any page and get stuck into it. You don't need to read cover to cover. The first book we'll talk about is Listified, which takes the best and most amazing parts of the universe, erupting volcanoes, medieval machines, jumping spiders, exploding stars, and everything in between. And it organizes them into quirky list form for curious kids to get into. Each list presents subjects from new and unexpected angles. So have you ever wondered which 10 dinosaurs were the largest and what they weighed in cats? Or how much of your DNA you share with other animals and bananas? Well, you'll find that out and more in the 400 lists in this book. The next Britannica book is Factopia. This is all about weird and wonderful facts and how they connect to one another. So did you know that alligators can stick out their tongues, but crocodiles can't? Or that some butterflies drink turtle tears? Every fact in this book is connected to another in an ingenious web of information. So you'll be taken on an incredible journey, hopping from topic to topic in unexpected and hilarious ways. You'll also discover extraordinary facts about space, bones, dinosaurs, goats, spiders, robots, kings and queens, and much, much more. And now the Britannica all-new Children's Encyclopedia. This book's actually coming out this year. It should be in stores very soon. But I just wanted to really quickly touch on it today because it's the Britannica book's flagship title. Britannica have not published a children's encyclopedia for 36 years. And this is just a gorgeous book. It's massive, 400 something pages, hardcover, beautiful. But another reason why I wanted to bring it up today is that Christopher Lloyd, who is the editor of this book, he's also the founder and publisher of What on Earth Books and Britannica Books, he runs a quiz, a Britannica quiz. He does it over Zoom, and he's offering it out to schools for free for the rest of the year. So we're pitching it for a good event for year 6 kids. We've actually done it in the office, and
I won. Steve knew to leave space in that speech for me to brag about winning. So we can sort of firsthand tell you how much fun this is. It was an absolute ball.
It's manic. It really challenges you, and it can be run with any size group. So from 4 kids to 400. So if you're interested in that, give us a shout. You can send us an email. Georgie's just shared the education email address. Get in touch. Okay, moving on.
The Fantastic Book of Feelings starts off with a letter from author Marsha Williams. And if her name rings a bell, you might have her books on your shelves with her awesome comic-style history ones. So the letter talks about how everyone has bad feelings sometimes, and how usually they pass, but not always. Marsha says, because sometimes an unpleasant feeling doesn't go away. Instead, it starts to grow. It may even grow so big that it squashes all your nice feelings. This is when you need to take action and find a way of being in charge of your feelings. I hope that reading about how the young people in this book manage their feelings may help you if your feelings ever get on top of you. Marsha's core message is that keeping your mind healthy is just as important as keeping your body healthy. And as she says, if you or a friend have difficult feelings that don't go away, it's best to tell a trusted adult, just as you would if someone had a temperature or was covered in a rash. So the book goes on to share tips on keeping your feelings fit, with full-page spreads about dealing with a variety of things, including feeling anxious, sad, scared, shy, jealous, angry, happy. Each spread has a real kid's story about how they experienced and dealt with that feeling. There's plenty of practical tips throughout and a first aid kit, which is what you can see now, for all the feelings at the end. This book is especially good for helping younger kids understand what they're feeling. But I've never really seen another book quite like this, and I absolutely got a lot out of it myself as a 30-year-old woman. So there's plenty in this one for all ages, especially after a tough year like this one. Do Something for Someone Else introduces 12 real-life children who are changing the world through kindness and supporting others. There's Selin from Turkey, who created robotic dogs to help blind people. Elena from Germany, who was 11 years old when she was accepted into a university as their youngest ever violinist, and is now inspiring children to engage with music. Kes in the Philippines, who was homeless by the age of 4, and now set up an organisation to protect children living on the streets. And even Winter from Australia, who's passionate about providing clean drinking water with his fundraising program called Surf to School. The team say the aim of this book is to show how feeling part of a group, whether that be family, friends, school, or a club, is important to our health and happiness. Helping others can bring us closer to them, meaning that everyone benefits from us taking action to spread kindness wherever we can. It has plenty of tips at the back for how kids can make a difference to someone else, whether that's through showing kindness to family, friends, a stranger, or the environment. This one's from our friends at Magic Cat, and it sits well with their release from this year called Old Enough to Save the Planet, which was about real-life kids fighting climate change.
Now we have an exciting new nature storybook on the way. Wombat is from award-winning author Christopher Cheng. Christopher wrote Python in the Nature Storybook series, which was one of our first Australian books in this series. And it's illustrated by Liz Duthie, who's actually a first-time kids book illustrator, but it definitely won't be her last. I mean, just look how beautiful the art is. Wombats are one of Australia's most loved creatures, and our newest nature storybook shows different sides of their day-to-day life, whether it's burrowing or basking, digging or defending. The book educates young readers about the interesting ways that these animals build their homes, how they look after their family, and how they protect themselves from predators. If you're not already familiar with the Nature Storybook series, these books are a fantastic resource because they feature a lyrical narrative and engaging nonfiction combined with stunning artwork to pique the curiosity of young minds. Wombat is an utterly gorgeous new addition to the series, and we are so excited to share with you this book in April next year. And there'll be classroom ideas for it uploaded to our Nature Storybooks website, which Georgie will share the link for, which you should definitely go check out if you haven't already.
Okay, don't go check it out now because you'll get distracted and there's plenty more good stuff, but definitely bookmark it to check out later.
Yeah, okay, so next one is an amazing Australian road trip. This is a super fun picture book about Australian geography. So we've got a family, they're setting off on a road trip to find the perfect place to celebrate Auntie's birthday. They start in Melbourne and then they head west along the Great Ocean Road to the 12 Apostles, then to Caddithander, Lake Eyre and the Garn, Coober Ningaloo, Broome, Kakadu, Uluru, Great Barrier Reef, the Daintree, Sydney Harbour Bridge, Blue Mountains, Canberra, on the ferry over to Tasmania, and then back home to Melbourne. The text is in rhyme, so it's a really great read aloud. So it goes, we're travelling from Melbourne on a birthday trip west. Our auntie is 60 and we're off on a quest. She's keen for a picnic and fancies a view, a cake and a loud happy birthday to you. But also each page has snippets of non-fiction about the area that they're visiting that extends this book beyond a fun story to a really useful learning tool. The illustration style is really fresh with lots of movement and some fantastic characters like poor Auntie, who does not seem to be having fun anywhere. That's her up in the corner in the purple shirt up here. And then the end papers show a map of Australia, which pinpoints all the locations that the family visited along the way. And then continuing on with our non-fiction, our friends at Flying Eye Books have created this beautiful non-fiction title all about our Great Barrier Reef. It covers all aspects of the reef, from its formation to the flora and fauna of the reef itself and to the area surrounding it. It touches on human interaction and the dangers that the reef faces due to pollution. The art and design of this book is, as you can see, just gorgeous. It's really stylized, but the illustrations of the flora and fauna are always true to life. There's so much more to the reef than just beautiful coral, and this book explores it all.
Keeping the gorgeous art going is a picture book called Luna Loves Art. So Luna and her class are off to the art gallery for an excursion, and Luna is immediately enraptured by the amazing artworks. Her classmate Finn doesn't seem to be having fun though, and his behaviour is starting to make Luna sad. Maybe he's just mean because he needs a friend. This is a really gorgeous picture book about creativity, exploring and appreciating art, and connecting with kids in your class who might see things a little bit differently to you. It shows kids what an excursion to an art gallery is like, including learning about paintings and sculptures, getting inspired to do drawings, being careful around the artworks, and even checking out postcards in the shop. Joseph Coelho is a poet by trade, and his books are always beautifully written and very simple, but so much to unpack. His words go perfectly with Fiona Lumber's bright art, and there's lots of real life paintings to sort of look and find in the book. As you might have seen on the first slide, the pair do have another book, Luna Loves Library Day, where Luna excitedly visits the library every Saturday with her dad. So both of these are really good kind of first experience picture books for kids. Oscar's Tower of Flowers is a wordless picture book for young readers about love, community, and plants. When Oscar's mum goes away, he's in need of cheering up. His mum loves flowers, so Oscar draws a picture of one to feel closer to her, and then finds a plant on their balcony that needs watering. Caring for the plant sparks something inside little Oscar, so he's off to the plant store to buy more seeds. Then things escalate, which I hear is pretty common to people who love indoor plants, and I feel like Steve can sort of talk to it some way. So he has more greenery than he knows what to do with. So Oscar visits everyone in his apartment building to share some of what he's grown. It's a really lovely, simple story, told beautifully and in a way that leaves a lot of space for kids to discuss family, community, worry, sadness, and change.
Okay, now we've got Maybe. So there was an experiment a while back where a group of 4-year-olds were left in a room with a big, round, delicious chocolate cake. And they were told that the adults had to pop out just for a bit and nobody can eat the cake, but they will be back. And when they get back, everyone can eat cake. So the children know that they will eventually be allowed to eat the cake, but they just can't wait. A few of the brave souls move closer to the cake and they move back. They have lots of conversations about the cake. They touch the cake. And eventually the boldest one actually licks a bit of frosting from the side, but they're not eating the cake, right? So that's exactly what these proboscis monkeys are doing in Maybe. They're left in a tree and the big monkey tells them to not go down to the mango tree. There are lions down there. But the little monkeys kind of talk themselves around into thinking that they're not breaking the rules, but really, of course, they are. This is a story of temptation because mangoes are so very delicious and so very tempting. It's also a story of mischievousness and testing boundaries. They want to see how far they can go, and in the end, they push the boundaries so far that they're almost eaten up by a family of tigers. It's a very close call. Chris Horton's books are so beautiful and unique, and this one will make a fantastic read aloud in a library or classroom. Next, we've got Ernest the Elephant. So it's another book about boundary pushing. Anthony Brown is a classic picture book creator. I'm sure many of you know the Willy books, Gorilla, Piggy book, and many more. Ernest the Elephant is on the gentler side of Anthony's books. It's for sort of lower primary age readers. So in this book, Ernest walks along with his mum and the other elephants, eating, drinking, and sleeping, and he's happy. Until one day, he starts to wonder what else is out there. That's when he spots a jungle, a very brightly colored jungle, an enticing jungle. So he walks away from the elephant line to explore. The jungle, turns out, is exciting, but it's also a little bit frightening. But still, he explores. When he decides it's time to head back, he realizes he's lost. He asks for help, and he comes across a gorilla, lion, crocodile, and hippo, but they all refuse to help him, leaving Ernest helpless. So, seeing the poor elephant lost and alone, a little mouse decides to show Ernest some kindness and help him find his way home. Anthony Brown's illustrations are always stunning, and kids really respond well to them. So this is just another classic Anthony Brown book for little ones.
I Talk Like a River is an absolutely breathtaking book by Jordan Scott, with art by Carnegie Medal winning illustrator Sydney Smith, whose work you might know from Footpath Flowers and Town is by the Sea, among others. The boy in I Talk Like a River struggles with his speech. So I'm just going to read this page aloud because I can't do it justice without just reading it. So, the P in pine trees grows roots inside my mouth and tangles my tongue. The C is a crow that sticks in the back of my throat. The M in moon dusts my lips with a magic that makes me only mumble. So when he's called on in class, the other kids watch and laugh because they don't understand why the boy can't find his words or that his mouth doesn't work when he wants it to, especially not in the mornings. Sometimes talking makes the boy sad and scared. The boy's dad knows that every now and again he has a bad speech day and takes him to the river. His father points to the river. See how that water moves? That's how you speak. The boy looks at the water bubbling, churning, whirling, and crashing. My dad says I talk like a river, the boy tells himself. This is what I like to remember, to help stop myself from crying. I talk like a river, or from not wanting to speak at all. I talk like a river. Thinking of his speech like the river helps give the boy the courage to speak in front of his class, even when the sounds of the words are all around him. The author is a stutterer himself, and his father took him to the river when he was a child, just like in the book. The author says in his note at the back, stuttering is often mocked because it is seen as unnatural. For many, listening to and watching someone stutter is not a comfortable experience because language and sound are stretched to their limits. Strange noises burst from a contorting mouth, and what the listener thinks of as fluency or normal speech explodes. To stutter is to be disfluent, and fluency, my speech therapist used to say, is the ultimate goal. But at the river, I learned to think differently about fluency. The river has a mouth, a confluence, a flow. The river is a natural and patient form, forever making its way towards something greater than itself. Yet as the river moves, it stutters, and I do too. I always get a bit teary talking about this book. It really just blows me away every time I read it. I think it's a book that will mean a lot to so many children and is an absolute must-have for your library and classroom. Florence and Fox is a book all about the rules of Sharing Day. It's okay if you haven't heard of Sharing Day. Neither has Fox, but Florence explains all about it, especially how, unfortunately, Sharing Day is not for hundreds of days, and until then, she simply cannot share her toys with Fox. The rules of Sharing Day are a bit confusing to Fox and do seem to fluctuate. How come Florence says it's okay for her to borrow his bucket, even though it's clearly established it's not Sharing Day? By the end of the story, the sharing rules have been ironed out, and Florence and Fox's friendship is as strong as ever, because even though it's not Sharing Day, turns out it is Thank You Day. Two talented Australian creators, Zanny Louise and Anna Pignataro, have teamed up for this delightful book that will be a must-have for any child who, like Florence, finds it difficult to share. Florence's Fox is also going to be one of the titles featured with a Read to a Storytime kit for the first half of 2021. So keep an eye out for some great activities to share this book with little ones.
Now we have Raja Street. This is the story about a little boy who lives on Raja Street. Daddy, a little bit older brother, mummy, and eggs are his favorite things. His next favorite things are garbage trucks, and garbage trucks come on Wednesday. As he looks out the window, hoping it's Wednesday and waiting for a chance to see a garbage truck rumble by, he narrates his version of what's happening outside. The illustrations capture this boy's perspective and show the world the way it looks through his eyes. So the author-illustrator Mayo Yim is a Korean-Australian, and this is her debut book. It's lovely, it's quiet, and it will speak to those imaginative, thoughtful little ones. We also have a Read to a Storytime kit for this one. So check that out next year. And now we're up to our final book of today, The Rock from the Sky, from our favorite Canadian picture book creator, John Classen. So John is the author and illustrator of I Want My Hat Back, This Is Not My Hat, and We Found a Hat. and a frequent collaborator with Mac Barnett on books like Sam and Dave Dig a Hole, Triangle, Square, and Circle. And because there is never too much of a good thing, this book is a whopping 96 pages long. However, it's by no means the epic tome that the page number suggests. Each page is only a line or two of text, and it can easily be read in one sitting. It's a picture book in 5 parts, like a play in 5 acts, with 3 players, Turtle, Armadillo, and Snake, all of course wearing tiny hats. The stories are all about these 3 friends and the dynamic between them. None of them are named or gendered, and they all speak in John's trademark, slightly stilted formal style. The text is all in dialogue between Turtle and Armadillo. Snake doesn't talk, but is still very involved in the story. There's a lot going on in this little friendship group. They are very competitive. They're quite jealous, insecure, and they're very proud. For instance, the first story has Turtle and Armadillo standing on a flat, featureless horizon, arguing about whose spot is better. While every few pages, the reader sees that there's an enormous rock falling from the sky, getting ever closer. This book is really one that you just need to read. Everyone I've shown it to so far has loved it. It's funny, it's beautiful, it's a bit weird, and like all of John's books, it leaves readers with a lot of questions. That's it.
So that's all from us, guys. We just want to say a big thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. We know it's no small thing and we really appreciate it. We really loved having your company.